Hello, my name is Lauren Fahy and I'm postdoctoral researcher at the Utrecht University School of Governance. In this video, I'm going to explain some recent research I, along with my colleagues Erik-Hans Klijn and Judith van Erp, did on how regulatory agencies get their reputation. By regulatory agencies, we mean inspectorates and market supervision authorities. We asked 205 employees of Dutch regulators where their agency gets its reputation. We use a method called Q methodology. This lets us investigate which sources of reputation employees think are most and least important to the reputation of their agency. More than that, it allowed us to identify 5 different kinds of employees with distinct views about how their regulator gets its reputation. This study is part of a larger research project into regulatory agencies, their reputation, and how reputation supports regulatory authority. The principal investigator of this project, Judith van Erp, will first give some context about why we're studying regulatory agency reputation and what the larger project involves. I'll then come back to talk about the current study. I'll first talk about our theoretical and methodological approach, then give our 3 key findings, then Judith and I will talk about the theoretical and practical implications of the study. If you'd like to read the study for yourself, the details are currently on the slide.
Hello, I'm Judith van Erp, Principal Investigator of the project Authoritative Reputations of Regulators in Turbulent Times. Regulatory agencies have always been important in protecting public safety and promoting the smooth functioning of markets. They do so by using their subject matter expertise to implement law and enforce compliance. Traditionally, agencies were highly focused on the legality of activities, but today their task is broader. As risks facing markets and societies have grown more complex, so has the work of regulatory agencies. In complex regulatory environments, what is legal and what is risky can be ambiguous and contested. Agencies are expected to think not just about the letter of the law, but the public interest, and they must use their limited capacity to respond to emerging problems and prevent them, rather than to enforce. With these challenges in mind, it has never been more important for regulatory agencies to have an authoritative reputation, to be seen by their stakeholders as legitimate, trustworthy, and experts worth listening to and cooperating with. Regulatory agencies, though, work in a contested environment. They face high expectations, media scrutiny, and political critique, as you see in these examples. So it may not be enough just to deliver results, but to strategically communicate about those results to create and maintain an authoritative reputation. And it's these issues which inspired our project. So, Authoritative Reputations of Regulators in Turbulent Times is a multi-year, multi-stream project. And it's funded by the Dutch Scientific Organization and involves a collaboration between Utrecht University and Erasmus University in the Netherlands and a consortium of independent regulatory agencies. The project is investigating first how regulating agencies acquire their reputation, and second, how reputation supports regulatory authority. That is how reputation might support greater compliance and public support for regulatory agencies. Now, over the last 2 years, the empirical research in the project has focused on the first question, how regulatory agencies acquire their reputation. And Lauren will spend the remainder of this video explaining how we studied this question and some of our key findings.
How do regulatory agencies acquire their reputation? By reputation here, we mean the widespread beliefs people have about the regulator. This is similar to the regulator's public image or brand. When we ask how regulatory agencies acquire their reputation, we're asking from what sources or through what mechanisms people come to have or change their beliefs about the regulator. Where reputation comes from is a long-standing question in academia. When it comes to regulatory agencies, though, this question has only been studied in earnest for the last 20 years or so. And it has most often been studied by observing external agency behavior. Researchers have tended to look at what regulatory agencies do and then infer what it means about how they understand where their reputation comes from. Research with regulatory insights is less common, and this is especially true for studies with regulatory agency employees. Studying employees has been shown to be a very valuable source of understanding the complex motivations and behaviors of public organizations. Employees play a unique role in how agencies manage their reputation. It is ultimately employees, especially senior staff, who decide how and when to respond to reputational threats. So, understanding how employees think about reputation helps us predict how they will act to manage it. With this study, then, we aim to examine how employees think their regulatory agency acquires its reputation using a research design called Q methodology. Q methodology is a method developed for psychological research. Using a kind of factor analysis combined with qualitative analysis, Q methodology allows us to analyze the nuanced opinions of employees about agency reputation acquisition. In Q methodology studies, respondents are presented with a series of statements. Each statement represents a different source of reputation which might be important to a regulatory agency. We developed our statements based on pre-existing theories about what sources of reputation are most important to regulatory agencies. Employees then ranked these statements from least to most important. We asked employees to explain why they were ranking certain statements to the top and bottom of their list. Finally, we asked them a couple of demographic questions about themselves and their agency. We received 205 responses from employees of 8 independent Dutch regulatory agencies. This makes our study the largest of its kind to date. We did 3 kinds of analysis to produce 3 kinds of findings. First, we created descriptive statistics to see on average which statements were ranked highest and lowest. This gives us a sense of what is important and unimportant in the reputation their agency acquires according to the average employee. Second, we conducted a factor analysis. Instead of just looking at the average employee, the factor analysis allows us to identify the differences between employees. What are the different camps of opinion about how reputation is acquired? Finally, we did some exploratory linear regression. This lets us examine why different employees might have different views. For example, whether employees in different jobs or with more experience have different views on reputation acquisition. From this analysis, I'll now share some key findings. Our first key finding is that, on average, employees agree that regulatory agency reputation isn't just about delivering results, but communicating results strategically. Let's look at some of the statements with the highest mean scores. Here are some of the top-ranked statements from employees across all agencies. Employees usually strongly agree that reputation depends on having good quality staff. How people are treated in one-on-one interactions with regulatory staff heavily shapes how they see the agency. Employees think interactions with regulated organizations like inspections are important, but they also say staff interactions with citizens, like complaints procedures, heavily affect reputation. Agency effectiveness also matters for reputation. Employees usually strongly agree that recent agency performance on high-profile matters shapes how people view the regulator. Finally, media and communications are usually ranked as very important to agency reputation. Overall, this suggests that the average employee thinks that reputation is not just about being effective, but also carefully managing one's image through communications. So far, I've talked about the average employee in our study. But in our study, we were also interested in where opinions about reputation acquisition might vary. To analyze this, we did a factor analysis. Using what is called centroid analysis, we were able to group together employees who ranked the statements about reputation in similar ways. This revealed our second key finding, that different groups of employees have significantly different ideas about how their agency acquires its reputation. We call these different groups profiles. Our analysis showed 5 distinct profiles of employee views. I'll now briefly describe them. The first profile are the image managers. These employees think that regulator reputation is primarily based on how skillfully the regulator can sway its image with the media and politicians. For these employees, agency reputation is built in the public sphere, in mass media and the political arena. So their focus is on using strategic communications to try to influence how the agency is publicly viewed. Second are the agency promoters. These employees also think that the media and other influential voices are central to agency reputation, but they don't think the media can be swayed through good PR alone. Instead, reputation comes from performing well and making that good performance visible through using various communication strategies. But not all employees think that reputation is primarily about the public sphere. Profiles 3 and 4 both think reputation is instead built through direct personal interactions with staff. The customer service think that reputation is primarily based on good customer service for anyone coming into contact with the agency. The client servers think that reputation is based on good service for regulatees. For client servers, an agency's reputation hangs on how it manages its relationship with the individuals and organizations it supervises. Finally, there are those employees who think there's very little a regulator or its staff can do to change its reputation. The fatalists think reputation is largely set based on the agency's organizational, institutional mandate. For example, if the agency is established to enforce unpopular laws, there's no amount of good performance or PR that can improve its reputation. Reputation is also heavily influenced by what the media says about the agency, but unlike other profiles, the fatalists say that the agency has little hope of influencing what the media says. As we can see in the table, the fatalists are the smallest of the profile groups. More than 50% of employees are agency promoters or customer servers. But perhaps this raises a question for you. Why do employees fall into different profiles? What explains different views on reputation acquisition? A definitive answer is beyond the scope of this study, but we do have some interesting suggestive results. Our third key finding is that respondents from different regulatory agencies appear to have significantly different views. In this chart, you can see the 8 agencies who participated in the study. Each colored block represents the number of employees in each profile. What we see is that agencies are dominated by different profiles. In some agencies, there are no employees in one or more of the profiles. Agency 1, for example, has an atypically high number of image managers. Agency 3, by contrast, is almost entirely made up of customer servers. Why might we see these differences? Our analysis was on a specific group and is exploratory in nature, so we cannot say definitively, but one answer is that these agencies face different reputational environments. Agency 1 is more in the public eye, so is more focused on the media. Agency 3 has more to do with the general public, and so is more focused on customer service. Our findings provide empirical support for the theoretical argument that regulatory agencies and their employees typically operate in a mediatized, politicized environment, and this affects how they acquire their reputation. Our study supports that it's not enough for regulatory agencies to be expert or effective. Employees typically say media coverage, agency communication strategy, and sometimes political factors also matter. Our results also provide empirical support for the argument that reputation acquisition and reputation management likely differs between regulatory contexts. In our study, employees from different agencies appear to have significantly different views on reputation acquisition. Future studies could look more deeply at these issues. They could investigate, for example, the underlying reasons why some agencies think the media is very important for their reputation, and others that direct interactions are more critical. Studies could also look at whether these different views about reputation lead agencies to have different approaches to managing their reputation. The profiles developed in our study could be useful for this research. They could serve as the basis for survey indices, interview schedules, or codebooks.
Many regulatory practitioners are interested in analyzing where their reputation comes from. What are the threats to our reputation? What are opportunities? And who are our most important audiences and how can we reach them? Our profiles can be used as a research tool for surveys or focus groups with staff. We've already found, with our consortium of regulatory agencies, this is also a useful conversation starter to get staff thinking about their organizational reputation. The profiles help agencies to reflect on where they stand in relation to their various audiences and how performance might support a good reputation, but also how other factors might affect this as well. Would you like to know more about our study or the Authoritative Reputations Research Project? You can go to our website or email us. Finally, I'd like to thank our consortium of regulatory agency partners, and we'd like to thank you for your attention.